And again, on the supply side, like I said, it's harder and harder to permit mines,
Yeah.
takes longer and longer. So you know that Grasberg mine that was shut down was a huge amount of copper supply stopping instantly. There's been other in Central America, other copper mines that have been shut down for political reasons. So the supply side, it's up. I don't think people actually understand, Michael, how important it is to find and build good mines to supply the world with the copper that's used in technologies to bring our lives. I mean, our lives are easier and better than they've ever been, but it needs these raw materials to keep things going. And as you know, the copper price has gone way up, and I believe it's going to continue to go up. But it's so hard. It's getting harder and harder to find economic large copper deposits that can produce. And that's tough, right? A lot of easy ones are in the Roman times in Portugal. The Romans would be walking over the ground and they'd find sulfides on the ground and they'd dig it up and they'd make lead and zinc and copper and all sorts of stuff. And nowadays you just don't get that. The geologists are scouring the planet for more deposits.
You know, one of the best things I get to do here on Money Talks is talk to people who are actually doing it. I love the analysts, yes, but I also want to talk to the people who are actually in the business of, mining, for example, is one of our favorites. We've done so much with oil and gas. We've done it with artificial intelligence. Well, that's why I'm so pleased to have the chairman of Silver North, CEO of Pacific Opportunity Capital, Mark Brown, is with me. Mark, thanks for finding time.
Oh, great to be here, Mike. Always love being on your show. Great, big fan of all the stuff you're doing.
Well, it's kind of easy these days, with silver. I mean, the same conversation 5 years later or 4 years. I mean, we've had a little pullback, but look at the overall momentum is huge. And I don't know any silver companies who plan for prices like this for an extended period of time. So, kind of a little easier role with Silver North, especially. I was just reading, by the way, and update me on this. A great new discovery, or a new vein. So tell us all about that, the silver,
Well,
etc.
there's a lot of amazing things is going on, as you know, and we've talked about this before. Where I've made the most money in this market is when you get the price of your commodity going way up, like we do with silver over $50. It's really quite incredible.
Hmm.
And at the same time, you get a mineral project that's making a significantly large, high grade discovery. When you get those things together and money starts to come into your market, all of a sudden it's very, very good for your shareholders, investors. And so on Tuesday or Monday, sorry, we announced one of the highest grade drill holes we've ever announced at Silver North Resources. And it's on top of holes we drilled last year. So this is quite significant because it's a big tabular body going down. Last year we put about 4 or 5 holes in it, hit high grade silver. We were very, very excited because we hit bigger intercepts than we normally hit, and it's
Hmm.
silver and some lead and some zinc. And then this year we drilled a hole 90 meters below those holes, and we hit our highest grade result ever. So one of the intersections was 3 meters of over 2,000 grams per ton. So that's 2 kilos in a ton of rock, 2 kilos of silver. And we were just astounded. And it gets to the point where you get enough holes in there, and we need a few more holes where you can do a resource estimate of what you think you've got there in the ground. And when you get to that stage, and I've done this before, as I've talked to you about, that is where a lot of really big money comes into your stock, and it starts to move in great jumps. I mean, we're actually already up 400% this year, and that's mostly based on the silver price. But with the results we had now, uh, all bets are off at some point in the next little while here as we do more work, and we have more results coming out. We have 5 more holes to announce coming up. So lots of great, exciting stuff in that project.
Well, tell me a little bit about the process from here. I mean, off the top of my head, I would think there's got to be, as you say, you're getting toward the point where there's a feasibility study, that where there's, you'll have to get an environmental review, uh, relationships with indigenous groups, that kind of stuff. Uh, First of all, tell me the time frame to be realistic, because I think there's a lack of realism, by the way, floating around from the political circles. But I'm talking about, that's why we like to talk to guys who are actually doing it. So, give us a sort of just a broad brush timeline, or steps that you have to go through.
Well, there's one key advantage we have there, and those are all important issues. And we deal with the First Nations, the National Dun up there. They're a great group to work with. We deal with the local. We're right next door to Banyan, which has got a 7 million ounce gold resource. But one of the key things, we're also right next to the only operating mine in the Yukon right now, which is the Keno Hill mine, run by Hecla Mining. And the reason that's important for us as opposed to the other gold ones is because we have the same geology and the same type of potential deposits that they are currently mining, less than 20 kilometers from where we're finding everything with these drill holes. So, there's a new road we'd like to put in, and they've already got the mill. They're actually looking at expanding their mill. Obviously, with these silver prices and lead and zinc too, they're doing quite well financially now in that project. So for us, it's about drilling enough to find a big resource, and you're going to find multiple pods of this in the area. And when we do that, Hecla is the natural acquirer for this company, and that would give our shareholders a bunch of liquidity. That's not a given. It's high risk. We got a lot of work to do to get there, but it means we don't have to do the permitting. We don't have to do the mill construction. We don't have to raise huge amounts of money to build this because we've got a mine that's already processing the exact kind of ore that we would have right next door. So it's a bit of a huge advantage for us.
What about other infrastructure? It would seem to me if there's an operating mine, I don't have to talk to you about transportation issues to the same degree. And I'm just putting the realistic. It's not that there aren't some fabulous finds and fabulous places, et cetera, but you have to add that to the timeline. I mean, we don't have, for all the talk about, what is it, the Golden Triangle off the, in Toronto, or
Yep.
sorry, Ontario, pardon me. Or
Yep.
is there a difference? Ontario? No, I'm just kidding. In Ontario, there's a whole infrastructure issue too. Whether it's roads and besides, as you said, you're near a place where you can process it. That answers that question.
Yeah, and we look at all this stuff well in advance, even though we're a fairly early stage company. I mean, market cap's still only 20 million bucks, which is a drop in the bucket really compared to what the potential is. But so infrastructure is interesting. I'll tell you, I was up there a few weeks ago, and the one thing we need to fix is the road going in, and we've been working on that because it's pretty rough. It's about a 45-minute rough ride, but we've had a bulldozer up there fixing that. That's the basic thing. But there is power nearby. There's actually a power station right next door to our project. There's a airstrip right nearby, so you can get in and out. There's not a ton of people up there, which is good and bad because you're going to need more places for people to stay. What we do, because there's other miners in the area, we've actually been using Banyan Gold's camp, so we don't have to build our own camp to host all the people we need working up there. So that's quite easy, and we store all our fuel and supplies and stuff at their site. Their site is actually a runway for planes to come in, except that they have piled so much drill core on it. They're looking at building a new runway. So you got flights coming in and out, you got roads, you got power. Power is probably the biggest one, and both BC and the Yukon are currently talking about expanding their power grids. And one important thing is that the Yukon power grid is not connected to the BC power grid, which you would have thought would have been done many, many years ago, but they are looking at that. And, these governments look at stuff, which means it's slow going. It's probably a 10-year process or something. But in the meantime, there is other power sources up there. A lot of it is not as hydro friendly as we have in BC. But that'll be a big issue. And for us, again, because we've got an operating mine next door that's already powered, it's not such a big deal for us. But they definitely need some more roads. We go in behind a mountain, and the mine's on the other side. We want to get a more direct road going in and out there. So you gotta work with the governments to get all this stuff done. Fortunately, the Yukon actually just had an election as well, and the Yukon party won that election quite handily, actually. And they're the more kind of they're all fairly middle political spectrum parties up there, but they're probably the more business friendly. Let's get the Yukon working. So it's really important. I mean, there's a lot of potential projects that could go into mining projects that could go into production in the Yukon in the next 10 years. And right now there's one operating mine, and there should probably be in the next 10 years, probably 5 or 6. So power is really important. All that infrastructure is hugely important. I don't know if you've been up there, Michael, but the roads are tough, even the highway, because of the permafrost underneath. So there's a lot of dips and a lot of parts of the roads that fall apart. And when I was up there in the summer, they were working handily on getting all this roads fixed. A lot of them, they leave dirt for the winter and stuff, which is actually fine because they're going to freeze up anyway. But they're working on a lot of the roads up there, and everything's, it's big distances. We fly into Whitehorse and drive 5 hours up to our project. And you got to be careful, and you got to pay attention on that road. But it's they're constantly doing work on it, which is really helpful for us.
Uh, Oops, let me change gears just for a second because the last time, well, not the last time, but one time you were on, you were talking to me, about the metals market post that Russian invasion. I think off the top of my head, it was March 2022, and I just want to give me, just a quick update on did things unfold the way the industry thought they would? Where are we at now?
Well, interesting in the silver market. I mean, um, uh, it's hard for us to understand in Canada, but if you live in a country in those areas that are under threat or threatened by
Yes,
their own governments or whatever, you are going to safe haven buying of gold and silver. Your currencies collapse, and we don't get this in the mainstream news here too much. But the amount of silver that's being bought, not only by citizens of countries, but also by governments,
sure.
is really quite astounding. And that's obviously driven the gold and silver price up. And the silver market itself, about for every physical ounce of silver, there's about 250 ounces of paper silver out there. And that can be in EFTs or silver certificates or futures markets, whatever it is. But that's very interesting because if you look at the physical supply, which really does drive the price, it's getting harder and harder to put mines into production. Some mines recently, like Grasberg, had an accident and the mine flooded and they had to shut it down. That took some million ounces of silver out of the production, out of the supply side of the equation. And uh, you've got countries with deficits going like crazy. And so people are looking to buy more silver for the monetary side, but also technologies are taking off. You and I were talking
Mm.
earlier about everyone thought silver prices were going to collapse when it wasn't used for photography needs anymore. And what they forgot is that silver is the best conductor that we have on planet Earth. And gold is very good too. And gold has an advantage that it doesn't tarnish as easily as silver does. But silver is used in a lot of the applications that need extremely good conductivity, like photovoltaics, solar power,
Yeah.
some in the nuclear industry as well, and a lot, in all the electric cars and stuff and technologies that are in those cars are using huge amounts of silver. So that demand is growing steadily. A lot of the AI stuff and these huge server farms, there's a lot of silver in those things. So the demand is steadily growing, and for us, that's really good. We can't control the price of silver, but we're in an environment where it seems to be steadily going up at a time when we're drilling, higher and higher grade results, and that's great for us. So it's hugely advantage. And the market itself, I think, is going to keep steadily going up. I'm surprised it's gone up so fast. Everyone says it's due for a pullback, and then it's going to regain its momentum upwards. But I can't control that. I can control how much we drill and hope for the
Mhm.
best results, and that's what we focus on: is the things we can control.
Before I let you go, I want to again switch gears because you guys do a lot of stuff. You're involved, with a lot of stuff with the Pacific Opportunity Capital. But I want to talk copper for a second because you also, sit
Yes.
on the board, isn't it, of Copper Fox Metals?
Yep.
So give me a quick take on where we're at with copper these days.
Well, copper is very similar to silver. It's used in a huge amount of technologies. There's a huge amount of the world, again, we don't see this in Canada, that doesn't have power. And those places want to get power, and the younger generations want to get there, and so there's power lines being built all over the world that use a lot of copper and systems that use a lot of copper. And again, on the supply side, like I said, it's harder and harder to permit mines,
Yeah.
takes longer and longer. So that Grasberg mine that was shut down was a huge amount of copper supply stopping instantly. There's been other in Central America, other copper mines that have been shut down for political reasons. So the supply side, it's up. I don't think people actually understand, Michael, how important it is to find and build good mines to supply the world with the copper that's used in technologies to bring our lives. I mean, our lives are easier and better than they've ever been, but it needs these raw materials to keep things going. And as you know, the copper price has gone way up, and I believe it's going to continue to go up. But it's so hard. It's getting harder and harder to find economic large copper deposits that can produce. And that's tough, right? A lot of easy ones are in the Roman times in Portugal. The Romans would be walking over the ground and they'd find sulfides on the ground and they'd dig it up and they'd make lead and zinc and copper and all sorts of stuff. And nowadays you just don't get that. The geologists are scouring the planet for more deposits, and they're harder to find. Some of them are a lot deeper. They're going after lower grade stuff, which is riskier. So there's a lot of issues that go in there. And for me, when I look at the metals I have sitting around myself here in my office, my car, my truck, the metals, finding the metals to keep that whole system going is getting harder and harder. And it's I don't know. I'm appreciative of how much we have and how much we get to use every day in our daily lives.
Well, as I say, but you've done a great job in reminding people that it's more than making announcements. You know, the practical side. I mean, I'm big on the practical side. You know, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we've had no shortage of announcements. But now the real work begins. No, I don't care what we're talking about, which projects we're talking about, what resource we're talking about. There's a realistic, practical side to it, and you've done a great job because you have to. You know, you're on the ground, whether we're talking, you know, Silver North or any other projects that you do with Pacific Opportunity Capital. So great stuff, Mark, and I appreciate you finding time. And best of luck in the new year.
Thanks, Michael. It's great. We're at an exciting time where big money's coming into the market, and that it's going to be a fun time for the next 4 or 5 years here. So lots of work to do.
Great stuff. Thanks.